Lesson 9-4, using proportions, and in this lesson you use proportions to solve problems. Why is it important? Because using proportions can help you change the number of servings in a recipe. Okay, and let's take a look at this real-world application in economics. Imagine paying almost $20 for a 2-liter bottle of soft drink. That's the kind of price that the Russian people have been paying since former President Yeltsin opened their markets to free trade in 1992. Okay, the average monthly wage for a Russian is $110, roughly around that time, while the average American takes home about $2,197 a month. Okay, so if a Russian pays 44 cents for a loaf of bread, that is like an American paying $8.79. Okay, so the table at the right shows the cost in US dollars for different items purchased in Russia and the equivalent price in terms of the average American income. So what is the US equivalent cost for a bottle of aspirin that costs $6.72 in Russia? So we will solve this in example 3. So let's take a look at this one. The Russian cost in US dollars, 69 cents for eggs. The US equivalent cost is $13.78. Since they only earn $110 a month, okay, 69 cents would be huge. Okay, so blue jeans in Russian cost is $48. So if you make this equivalent to US cost with American wage at $2,197 a month, the jeans would probably cost $958.56. 95 cents for soft drinks, $18.98. Okay, US cost. And the list goes down. Look at this one. American ice cream 2 quarts in Russia, it's $9.24. Look at the equivalent cost in US dollars, $184.52. Okay, so that's a lot of money. Okay, if you're buying ice cream in Russia, that's a luxury. Okay, so again, count your blessings. So we will solve this example in example 3 because it's asking, okay, if what is the US equivalent cost for a bottle of aspirin that costs $6.72 in Russia? Okay, so before we can solve that, we need to learn proportions. So you can use a proportion to solve problems that relate to ratios. A proportion is a statement of equality of 2 or more ratios. So actually a proportion is an equation. Okay, it tells you that 2 ratios are equal to each other. Okay, remember what ratios are. A ratio is a comparison of 2 numbers by division, and it can be expressed as a fraction. So consider the general proportion A over B equals C over D. This is a proportion because it is a statement of equality. The equality is the equal sign of 2 or more ratios. That's one ratio. That's another ratio. Okay? So let's copy that down. A over B equals C over D. Okay? And then if we multiply each side by BD, okay, this is to eliminate the fractions. Okay, so to eliminate the fractions, we multiply each side by BD. Okay, we end up with AB equals CB. So what do you notice? Okay, what you notice is that the products AB and CD, sorry, AD and CB are called cross products of a proportion. Okay, so one way to determine if 2 ratios form a proportion is to check their cross products. Okay, cross products simply mean this, multiplying A and B together, okay, and C and B together. That's what it means. So cross products, property of proportions. In words, the cross products of proportions are equal, of a proportion are equal. If A over B equals C over D, then A times D is equal to B times C. If AD equals BC, then AB is equal to CD. Okay, so this is the property of proportions which we will use in example 1. So in example 1, use cross products to determine if each pair of ratios form a proportion. 1/4 and 4/16. So we want to find out if they're equal by finding their cross products. So the cross products is the cross product of 1 times 16 is equal to the cross product of 4 times 4. So 1 times 16 is it equal to 4 times 4? The answer obviously is yes. So 1/4 is equal to 4/16. Let's take a look at example B. Okay, 1.5 using cross products. Okay, we can use a calculator for this one, but we don't need to. Okay, so 9 times 1.5 is equal to 13.5. 5 times 3 is equal to 15. We're now doing cross products right here. So that's 9 times 1.5. Okay, is 13.5, and 3 times 5.9 is equal to 15. Okay, now if you notice, the cross products are not equal. Okay, therefore 1.5 over 5.0 is not equal to 3/9. Okay, and let's see how we can use cross products to solve proportions. So let's solve this proportion. C over 35 equals 3/7. Okay, so first, using cross products, this becomes now C times 7 equals 35 times 3. Okay, because of this, let me make this line thinner. Okay, so if you multiply C times 7, you get this. If you multiply 35 times 3, you get this. Okay, so you end up with 7C equals 105, and this is simple enough. You solve for C by dividing both sides by 7, and C equals 15. So divide each side by 7. Okay, and this is using cross products. And then we simply multiply those two. Okay, does no one show up? That's okay. So the answer is 15. So the solution is 15. Let's do the same thing for example 2b. Okay, using cross products, this now becomes 10 times d equals 8.4 times 5. So this becomes, to be able to solve for d, divide both sides. You divide both sides by 10. Okay, and then dividing both sides by 10, you end up with d equals 4.2. Okay, so thus d equals 4.2. And in example 3, we can use proportions to solve real life problems. Okay, so let's refer to the beginning of the lesson. Find the US equivalent cost for a bottle of aspirin. That's what we want to find. So we know that the average monthly income for Russian and an American, and the Russian cost for aspirin, that's what we know. We need to find the US equivalent cost. Okay, so to be able to solve this, we use proportions. Write and solve a proportion with the Russian and American incomes and costs. Table shows that the US equivalents are about 20 times the Russian costs. So an estimate of the US equivalent is 20 times 7, or $140. Okay, so let's solve this. Let A represent the US cost for an aspirin. Okay, so Russian income over Russian cost, American income over American cost. Now, can you flip this over? Russian cost over Russian income, American cost over American income? The answer is yes. Okay, but this time we're doing Russian income over Russian cost, American income over American cost. Okay, and what you also notice is this. Okay, is that if you look at the numerator, they're both income, and you look at the denominator, they're both cost. So in a proportion, it is important for you to be able to organize your data so that the numerator and the denominators are related to each other. Okay? So using that proportion, we have $110, which is the Russian income per month, and the Russian cost for a bottle of aspirin is $6.72. American income per month is 2,197, and we don't know the American cost for a bottle of aspirin. So using proportions or cross products, we now have 110A equals 6.72 times 2,197. And let's use a calculator for this one. Okay, that means we are dividing the product of 6.72 times 2,197 by 110. So with the calculator, you multiply these two first and divide it by 10. So 6.72 times 2,197 and divide that by 110 will give you 134.2167273, and therefore the equivalent American cost is about $134.22. So it's quite expensive to have a headache in Russia. Okay? And finally, to be able to check our answer, the cost is close to our estimate, so it is reasonable because the cost is around $140, our estimate, and our actual cost is very close to that. And let's connect this to geometry. Last example. Proportions are used to relate size of figures with the same shape. Okay, let's take a look at example 4. Blueprints for a house show a room that is 2 and 5 over 12 inches long. The key to the blueprints say that 1/4 inch on the blueprints represents 18 inches in the house. How long is the actual room? So again, we start with a let statement. Let x represent the actual room length. Okay? So we start with 1/2 inch all over 2 and 5 over 12. 1/2 inch represents the blueprints, and 2 and 5/12 represents blueprints length. Okay, and if that's the case here, we need to do the other side. We need to do the same thing to the other ratio. So you have 18 inches, which is the actual, and actual length is x inches. So if you notice, this ratio talks about blueprints, and this ratio talks about the actual room. Okay? If and again, there is a relationship within the ratio. So if you use this particular ratio and use cross products, you now have 1/4 x is equal to 18 times 2 and 5 over 12. Okay. Simplify that further, you end up with 1/4 x equals 43 and 1/2. And to be able to solve for x, we know that we multiply each side by 4. Okay, and multiplying each side by 4, we end up with x equals 174. So the room is 174 inches, or 14 and 1/2 feet long. Okay, another way you can do this, okay, remember we talked about relationship between ratios, is that if you create let's say 1/2, 1/4 inch right here, okay, which is blueprints, and equate that to, or make it over 18 inches, which is the actual length or the actual house. Okay, we can make another ratio, which will mean this is 2 and 5 1/2 inches, 2 and over 5 over 12, all over uh, 2 and 5 over 12 all over, is it x inches still? Yes. Okay. And if you notice in this type of ratio, the numerator will all be blueprints. And the denominator will all be actual. Okay, so if you create this proportion, it still works the same way. Okay, so this is another way of solving this proportion. Okay, let's erase that so it won't cover the actual problem. Okay, and that's the end of our lesson. Okay, the secret word for this lesson would be blanket. Secret word is blanket. Okay, thank you for watching.